we want to invite Professor Lazarus Ojigi to please share his screen while I introduce him briefly. Professor Ojigi, are you sharing your screen? Okay. I think it's my pleasure to introduce. Okay, yeah, we can hear your voice, but permit me to introduce you briefly.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Professor Lazarus Ojigi is a Nigerian professor of geomatics with specialization in geodesy, engineering surveying, and geoinformatics. He has a wide range of scientific and data management trainings in space science and technologies, satellite and electronic surveying, GNSS gravimetric analysis, satellite remote sensing, satellite altimetry, and etc., including machine learning and spatial data science. He began his academic career as an assistant lecturer at the Federal University of Technology, Minna, in Nigeria in 1995, and rose through the ranks to eventually becoming a professor of geomatics in 2014 at the Fed Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Nigeria. He is a visiting professor at the African University of Science and Technology, Nigeria, as well as the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Imperial College, London, and UK. So Professor Ojigi is a member of many active working groups and serves on the International Policy Advisory Committee and as well as International Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, and also an expert working group on African Geodetic Reference Frame, AFREF, among others. He has held many leadership positions at a number of institutions, including the Nigerian National Space Agencies, and he was appointed the Executive Director of African Regional Institute for Geospatial Information Science and Technology, now known as AFRIGIST, under the auspices of United Nations Economic Commission Africa, UNECA. Since January 2023 to date, he has published in several reputable journals and presented papers in many conferences. He's a mentor to many, and it's a privilege to have Professor Ojigi here. He's sitting over a continental body that is actively involved in capacity building at all levels, professional level, academic level in Africa. So Professor Ojigi, please, you are most welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Batunde, my friend, and Mr. Bale Fernand and Camille. I want to sincerely appreciate every one of you for the effort put together to organize this workshop. I'm speaking on a topic I titled Bridging the Gaps in GNSS Capacity Development and Data Sharing for Realization of African Geodetic Reference Frame. From the presentation by Andre, he's done the introduction about what AFREF was supposed to achieve. And I will quickly, I won't spend too much time on the AFREF policy or principle or philosophy, but I will dwell more in the area of the GNSS, the gaps in the capacity development and data sharing, which has actually militated against the progress of AFREF. And then we'll look at some of the fears that we have about data sharing in Africa, and then how do we bring the gap, and then looking forward. And I'll make conclusion. Of course, we know that GNSS and geodetic capacity and applications in Africa, they are indispensable recipe into solving the problem of development and sustainable management of the environment in Africa, and not only Africa, the entire globe. African countries at different levels have made one level of infrastructural investment, but the efficiency in terms of infrastructure, institutional and human capacity development is still below what we ought to be able to achieve the purpose for which AFREF was set up. In particular, the investment have been done, in the many institutions have established infrastructure, GNSS infrastructure, privately or those by government offices. And all these put together is aimed at solving a lot of problems. Apart from those AFREF objectives, there are other applications that within Africa that GNSS ought to help us to achieve. In all this, there are gaps, and this paper therefore aims at identifying the key gaps in this capacity building and how do we bridge them. Of course, over Africa, we now have constellation of satellites as is all over other countries of the world. They also cover Africa, is not exempted. But all we need to do is to take advantage of this facility, which privately and publicly countries across Africa have invested in this resource, and they have installed facilities, capacities have been built in terms of human training, institutional training, or policy put in place. Now, everybody is from the report that we have received this afternoon from Uganda, from South Africa, from Tunisia. And you see that each country is dwelling in using its own reference frame, meaning that Africa is not unified. And the satellite constellation is all over us. The opportunity is provided, the same environment, the same facility, the same infrastructure that is available for Europe, that they have Europe. Why is it not feasible for Africa to have AFREF? The vision when it was set up was purposely for us to have this framework so that development will become very seamless across Africa. And then if we want to do velocity modeling of Africa or plate tectonic motion, study using the space science, and then looking at our space weather, atmospheric modeling, ionospheric studies, like was presented by Olusegun. We can aggregate, we can optimize the use of these facilities to study the whole continent of Africa and what happens across the continent of Africa. But when we are not unified, when the systems are not in the same coordinate system, in geocentric reference system, it becomes difficult for you to do a plan that can cover the whole of Africa. So it's like a patch. Everybody, Andre had underscored this. So a patch, and this division, that was the reason AFREF was set up, to unify the entire continent. Now, if you check on this map, the IGS map, as of 2019, produced by IGS, you see, look at the vast land over Africa that is empty. And that does not mean that those countries don't have coarse infrastructure. Most of these countries where you see the whole area looking plain and there is no control, there is nothing to show that there is an exploitation of infrastructure, they have infrastructure established and even streaming data locally and solving their national problem. And if the question I asked in one of our meetings in Nairobi last 2 weeks is, if we have this data set available, what then stop Africa from sharing this data, putting them on the map, and then we will be able to generate and have solutions that we can solve our continental problems. Now, Africa, 54 countries, you can imagine 54 countries each one having different kind of reference system. That is not obtainable in Europe. That is why if we're talking of African Space Agency or African Space System or Space Organization, if we're in space, we must consider ourselves as one unit so that we can see ourselves a synoptic coverage from up, seeing Africa as one unit, and then computing and delivering solutions that have to do from across plates. In Africa, is, have the Somalian plate and then the Nubia plate. These two plates, of course, if things are happening, apart from interplate motions, you have intraplate activities. that we can study from one country to the other. Issue of border, issue of boundary, issue of navigation, issue of aviation. So there are a lot that we can do among these 54 countries. But here we are, we have different reference systems. So since inception in 2000, AFREF's progress has been very slow, as a matter of fact. And I felt concerned that if we have been able to achieve some level of progress, as at 2014, the first realization, the first computation was done, as we heard from Andre, after the setting up the operational data center in South Africa, and then the computation was in Tunisia as what I call a first trial solution. And then after that, in 2017, we had a meeting, and the meeting took place in I think in Addis Ababa. And I have a picture in the future, ahead, that I'm going to show us that at this meeting we agreed that what was realized in Tunisia should be scaled up by countries adding information, streaming data to the AODC, that is the operational data center, so that we will have enough data for realization. Now, the general objectives have already been outlined by Andre's presentation, so I will not go over that. But what are the specific benefits of this, what we are calling AFREF 4? Number one, it will unify and modernize the geodetic reference system in Africa and align the whole of Africa to HRF to support Africa-wide sustainable development planning and implementation. It also supports seamless cross-border international boundary mapping, dispute resolution, and integration in Africa. Also to provide support and an accurate geodetic joint development for Africa. Of course, we know that geodesy is not just about GNSS, but GNSS, we integrated with a gravimetric network, we can help develop GEOID for Africa, not GEOID for each country. This will facilitate a lot of other development projects across Africa, like I mentioned earlier, in the area of transport, in the area of monitoring of disaster, early warning, space weather, atmospheric model, just like was presented by my brother, Dr. Olusegun, on the Conga project I was talking about. And there are several mapping activities that we can do across Africa. Why is it difficult for us to bring up the solution that will now become uniform or unify the whole of Africa? Like as was presented by Andre in 2004, a management structure was put in place. It was not too efficient. Then in 2018, it was revised. What was revised is what you can see as figure 5.b there. I modified it from what I got from Parker. Aslam Parker presented it. So I just tried to correct some names there, putting Afrigis and the rest of them. So what am I saying here? Even this one that we have stated, this revised proposal for AFREP working group steering committee, each country will need to take deliberate steps and action to release data, as I'll go ahead to suggest in the way forward. Now, in 2017, we visited the Addis University. The committee visited Addis University after our meeting. The meeting held between 19th and 24th of November in 2017. And this meeting was to deliberate on implementation, operation, processing, analysis of modern geodetic techniques for us to realize AFREF. Now, after this meeting the working group was chaired by Richard Wonacott, and he's retired now, but I know he may be online, maybe somewhere watching what we are presenting. After this, everything went into comatose until last October when we had the meeting at UNECA, and there was a resolution of setting up a steering committee or where the secretariat can be at UNECA, so that coordinated by UNGGIM, for us to have a principal point where activities of AFREF we can hold somebody responsible. So of course you see that there is a lot of lethargic activity, non-interest towards this AFREF program, even from the beginning to date, and that gave the reason for us to have the snail speed that we are recording. Now, I just tried to partition this diagram presented by Wonacott in 2005 during the FIG. So I just splitted it to say, okay, where is Africa? On the left, you see us, everybody on his own. On the right, you see now unified. When we are to be unified, what is the gap? The gap is what I want to establish in this. So as I go ahead, now, our next slide, what are the gaps? I categorize the gap in 3 folds. Now, we have technical, socio-political, and then coordination and governance. Under technical gap, we have poor management of the existing infrastructure we have. Where the infrastructure they are available, they are not properly reported. They are underreported. They are underutilized. Some of them are not even in compliance to IGS standard. Inefficient cost support infrastructure, like you heard from Olusegun's presentation, power requirement, internet, and security. So we are not integrated. Low technical training on installation, and the inadequate technical incentive for geodesy staff and personnel across Africa. This is technical. Then on the socio-political gap, we have the lack of political will of government of all countries in Africa. Lack of full understanding and interest of what is driving AFREF. To drive AFREF to achieve an objective. Lack of readiness of countries even to share data. Cold feet to sharing data and resources. Poor in-country advocacy, awareness, and funding for GNSS and geodesy. There are also what I call unfounded fears about data sharing in Africa. How will somebody have fear? What are the fears about data sharing? When your whole country is visible from space, from anywhere in the world, over-reliance on external and global support. Those are the gaps I consider socio-political. On the coordination, we have problem, non-functional and regional, that like Andre has mentioned that. The good on paper, but when we come together, we will have a discussion. When all the countries go back, they will relate, they will not go on what has been agreed on. And there is abysmal level of capacity utilization. We have built capacity, whether human, infrastructure, or institution, they are not utilized. And a man that is trained, after a while, becomes stale if it's not further trained. So we have weak in country geospatial activities in countries. Most countries are not carrying geodesy as if it's something that is solving the problem of the continent. Meanwhile, geodesy is the framework for every sustainable development. There's also weak responses from the African Union when things like AFREF or sub-regional initiatives like this are mentioned. So they are not as proactive to support such activities like done in Europe and in the Americas. Now, this is a picture I just from Kome et al. And Ogaja and the rest of them. This was what they did as a 2019 of representation of when you look at this map, you still see blank spaces over Africa. No, it's not as if there are no coordinates. There are no stations available in those countries. They are, but the issue is refusal to share, refusal to integrate. Now we need facility for processing in the area using the software like Binis, Gamit, Gypsy, LGO, some other proprietary software that can help us solve a lot of problems in Africa. So training across board is required. So since inception, the Africa Initiative, there have been appreciable investment, but this investment, like I said earlier, is not commensurate with what effort that have been made across Africa. So we therefore need this kind of investment to show. Let the results show in realizing AFREF so that we can talk with one voice. We can see Africa as a unit, just like it's done in Europe. So many agencies of government, so many organizations, stakeholders across Africa have invested a lot of resources on AFREF and CORS and geodesy. But because of lack of integration, we are not getting commensurate results to what we have invested. Now, what are the fears about data sharing in Africa? Number one, the fears that yes, there will be misuse and compromise of national heritage and security. For me, I say it's neither here nor there. Sharing data will equate, for instance, scientific know-how. Everybody wants to be bigger than the other. No, it doesn't matter. All of us can make it together. Loss of economic. I like the model with South Africa. They don't collect money for all their stations they are streaming. So people are afraid of market values and revenues from GNSS. So as a result of that, they don't want to share data. This, as far as I'm concerned, this fear is unfounded because what you get from GNSS is invaluable benefits. You cannot cost it in money. Then protecting national priority or proprietary information. People feel that there are certain information that is peculiar to some country, it must not be shared. Then they are afraid of legal implication in case where there are data that are shared wrongly when they are used before the effect of the usage will be known. Then thinking of uncertainty of data quality and standard. So people are afraid of sharing data. But in my own understanding and my own opinion, I feel all these fears are largely unfounded, because whether you have this, you provide this data or not, the country you belong can be extrapolated from other countries around you. Then how do we bridge the gap as I round up? Now, this steering committee that has been set up must be put to work, must coordinate and implement the activity to finality. If that is properly done, that 2018 revised steering committee, that will solve the problem. And they will also require regular, at least twice a year, training, capacity development program by UNECA and continuous knowledge sharing across with geodesists and geospatial scientists in Africa. We need to do that continuously. We just finished one workshop in Nairobi in Kenya sponsored by the GGCE. And it was a 1-week training, and it was very, very beneficial. Countries and mapping agencies also must be intentional and deliberate, and adhere to decisions and adhere to standard and take decisions that we must establish this. Each country must take even at least one station, so that Africa can first realize what we call the Africa reference frame. If it's version 2, if we consider the one of version 2014 as the version 1, this can be version 2 or version 1.2. Then we should have accountable national leadership and motivation on the realization of the AFREP project in Africa. If we don't do this, there is no way we'll be coming back after 10 years. So we must dispel the fears of this so-called data sharing. Together, we will go far. So finally, we need advocacy across Africa at national and continental level to be championed by UNECA. And if you do that, I can assure you, within a short time, all results will be realized. Then, in conclusion, recent findings have shown that African countries have sufficient GNSS core infrastructure across Africa. We did a survey recently in our meeting. We were told that we had about over 400 core stations across Africa. Only 100 of this is enough for us to realize the first version, to have the solution for the first version or second version that will take Africa from the first step. So, however, we need to build our capacities the more, and then to collaborate and work together so that Africa can become greater. Thank you very much, my colleague. So I hand over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. And for the insightful contributions. Then please, I want to ask whether we have some questions. We can still take 1 or 2 questions, short questions. Ms. Camille, did you notice anybody?
There is a comment from Anoro, and saying that about unifying cores in Africa, it seems that there would be multiple new projects, and there might be a desire to focus on one existing project. More a comment than a question.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks so much for the comment. And I think all these comments will be noted. And again, we want to thank Professor Ojigi for giving that continental view. And for sure, we'll get back to you later.